Why would someone choose to die for losing their honor? To most of us today, that sounds unthinkable. We live in an age of self-expression, of follow your heart, where right and wrong are often just points of view, but not everywhere, and not always. In much of the Eastern world, there's something even more sacred than freedom, more important than reputation, more powerful than life itself. That something is called honor. On November 25, 1970, all of Japan stood still. Yukio Mishima, one of the country's most celebrated authors, appeared before a group of soldiers in Tokyo. After giving a short speech, he stepped into a quiet room and committed seppuku ritual, samurai suicide, in protest of what he saw as Japan's loss of its traditional honor. It was the 20th century, but that act belonged to another time. Mishima believed Japan had abandoned its soul, its loyalty, its discipline, its deep moral code, and he chose death to prove that some values are still worth dying for. Sounds extreme, maybe, but even today, in many Eastern cultures, honor and shame still shape entire societies, from Japan and South Korea to China and Iran. And unlike in the West, where shame is seen as something unhealthy, in these cultures, it's often a moral compass. In the modern West, we're told to stand out, to speak our truth, to laugh at our mistakes and move on. But in the East, it's different. Shame isn't a psychological problem. It's an ethical tool. It reminds you that you're part of something bigger, that your actions affect your family, your ancestors, your community, and that living without care, without consequence, is itself a kind of dishonor. Anthropologist Ruth Benedict, in her classic book, The Chrysanthemum and the Sword, explained that Japan isn't what she called a guilt culture, like the Christian-influenced West. Instead, it's a shame culture. In guilt cultures, morality comes from within, from conscience. In shame cultures, morality is socially reflected. It's about how others perceive your actions. So in places like Japan, the fear isn't of being guilty, it's of being a source of shame. This is where words like giri, moral obligation, and haji shame come in. In Korea there's kemyeon face, the image you must protect. In China, the concept of lian ties your dignity to how your community sees you. What do all these ideas have in common? They teach one core truth. You don't just belong to yourself. Your life is woven into a larger fabric, your family, people, your nation. And everything you do leaves a mark. Now imagine growing up with that, where a single mistake might bring shame not just to you, but to your parents and ancestors. Where your failure isn't private, it's communal. To someone raised with individual freedom as the highest good, that might feel suffocating. But what if we've gone too far in the other direction? In the West, dishonoring your family is a joke in stand-up comedy. But in Japan, a minor scandal can push a CEO to resign in public. In South Korea, politicians step down for things we wouldn't even blink at. Which raises a difficult question. Did we lose something valuable when we gave up the idea of honor? In a world where everyone wants to be seen, maybe the real virtue lies in knowing when to step back. Maybe what we lack today isn't more freedom, but ethical boundaries. Maybe shame isn't the enemy of happiness, but the guardian of dignity. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper into how this culture of honor developed. From the samurai era to the corporate world of modern Japan and Korea, we'll explore how these ancient ideas still live on, even in an age of social media and AI. But before we move on, I want to invite you to something important. If you've come this far, it means you value depth, content that makes you think, that brings wisdom from a different angle. This channel exists thanks to people like you who believe that knowledge matters, that philosophy matters, that honor matters. So if you'd like to help keep this work alive, consider becoming a member of the channel. Just click the join button below. It's fast, it's easy, and it makes a real difference. Now, get ready, because in the next chapter, honor will no longer be just an idea. It will become a living story passed down through generations. In 2011, following a safety scandal in Japan's rail system, the president of Junior West, one of the country's major railway companies, held a press conference. He didn't deflect. He didn't blame someone else. He bowed. Not a quick nod, but a deep, long, solemn bow, the kind that comes from the waist, where the weight of shame is heaviest. No dramatic speech, no media spin, just one gesture. That said everything. This act, known as dogaza, is more than a bow. It's a ritual of public accountability. One of the most powerful expressions of remorse and humility in Japanese culture. To the Western eye, it might seem but in much of the East, it's a sacred way to begin restoring something that once lost is nearly impossible to recover: honor. And here's the thing, this honor isn't just personal, it's collective. In feudal Japan, the samurai followed a strict ethical code called Bushido, the way of the warrior. Honor wasn't optional, it was life itself. A samurai's actions reflected not just on himself, but on his entire clan. Failing to act with honor could only be redeemed in one way: seppuku, the ritual act of suicide. Today, those physical rituals have faded, but the spiritual weight, it's still there. Business leaders, athletes, politicians, they all know that. In Japan, South Korea, and parts of China, public failure isn't just a professional loss, it's a moral wound, and this mindset runs deep. Ruth Benedict, the same anthropologist we met earlier, wrote that shame in Eastern societies functions as a social mirror. You calibrate your behavior based on how it reflects in the eyes of others, your family, your community, your nation. But this isn't just about appearances. In Japan, for example, there's a cultural concept known as Han and Tateme. Han is your true inner feeling. Tateme is the public face you show to maintain harmony. And in between them lies that invisible scale, the daily weighing of personal truth against social responsibility. This balance shows up everywhere. In South Korea, you'll often hear the term kibun, which means preserving emotional balance in group settings, avoiding embarrassment at all costs. In China, concepts like Mianzi face and Lian moral standing govern how people interact, do business, and even handle failure. Which leads to a big cultural question: is living with shame really so bad? In the East, shame has long acted as a moral boundary. It discourages selfishness, it promotes reflection, it forces people to think twice before acting in ways that might dishonor their family, their company, or their community. There's beauty in that restraint, but also danger, because when shame becomes too heavy, it crushes. A recent study by the OECD revealed that countries like Japan and South Korea have some of the highest suicide rates among young people. Why? The pressure to succeed, the fear of failure, the deep belief that disappointing your family brings irredeemable shame. In South Korea, students face what's known as the Hell exams, ultra-competitive national tests that determine your future. Failing them doesn't just mean a different college, it can feel like disgracing your entire bloodline. In that kind of environment, honor becomes a burden, a double-edged sword. At the same time, on the opposite end of the world, we've taken shame and thrown it in the trash. We celebrate outrageous behavior, we reward controversy, we forgive and even admire those who show no remorse. It's as if we decided that the absence of shame equals empowerment. But here's the twist. Maybe both extremes are missing the point. Too much shame, it paralyzes. No shame at all, it corrupts. Somewhere in the middle, there's a hidden wisdom. Maybe we need to redefine what modern honor looks like, not as perfection, and not as blind obedience, but as an internal compass, an awareness that our actions ripple beyond ourselves. That responsibility doesn't mean repression, it means maturity. That dignity isn't outdated, it's essential. Honor in the East has survived for centuries, not because it was imposed, but because it worked. It bound people together, it built trust, it reminded everyone, you're not alone, you represent something greater. And when that idea is misused, it becomes control. But when used wisely, it becomes something powerful. Character. In the next chapter, we'll step fully into that idea. We'll explore what a modern code of honor might look like in today's chaotic world. Not rigid, not toxic, but intentional. A way to move through life with integrity, even when no one's watching. Because sometimes, true honor begins not with a sword or a bow, but with a quiet choice made in silence. Maybe honor didn't vanish, maybe it just learned to stay quiet, while the rest of the world started shouting. We live in an era of noise. Everyone has a platform, everyone has a voice, but very few have something deeper, something like dignity. In the East, with all its complexities and contradictions, the culture of honor still holds one truth tightly. You don't ask for honor, you live it. That's why it's not loud. It doesn't need hashtags, it doesn't thrive on applause. It survives in the quiet spaces, in small acts of consistency, discipline, and character. In Japanese monasteries, monks wake before dawn to sweep temple courtyards by hand, even when no one is watching. To the outside world, it looks like cleaning, but for them, it's ritual. Every sweep is a lesson, that greatness lives in the ordinary, and that honor begins in stillness. This kind of honor doesn't trend, it doesn't go viral, it won't be turned into a 60-second inspirational clip, but it builds something far more durable than popularity. Self-respect. And that's what many of us have lost. We traded honor for validation, shame for sarcasm, depth for display. We no longer fear doing wrong, we fear being judged for it. And once that judgment fades, we move on, as if nothing ever happened. but something does happen. We start to feel hollow. Not because we were punished, but because we weren't held accountable, not even by ourselves. That's where Eastern philosophy still speaks quietly, but clearly. The Stoics in the West had a word for it: erite, the excellence of living in line with your purpose. Not perfection, but alignment. Doing the right thing, even when no one will ever know. Eastern thinkers echo that idea powerfully. Confucius said that the noble person acts with integrity when no one is watching. He believed that real honor isn't earned in battle or business. It's earned in a daily commitment to being better than you were yesterday. Gandhi, from the Indian tradition, argued that real freedom begins with self-discipline, that a nation or a person is only as strong as their inner code. They were speaking across centuries and cultures, but the message is the same. Live by something greater than yourself today. We're told to be ourselves, but what if being yourself means being immature, impulsive, harmful? What if the highest version of you is still waiting to be shaped? Honor says, don't just be yourself, become someone worth being. And that starts in the details. Keeping your word even when no one's checking. Apologizing not to save face, but to honor truth. Choosing silence over outrage. Standing firm in values, even when they cost you something. That's not weakness, that's power. In fact, in a world obsessed with image, honor is rebellion. It's the quiet refusal to compromise. It's saying, I don't need everyone to agree with me. I just need to be able to look in the mirror and respect what I see. You won't always be rewarded for that. Sometimes, you'll be misunderstood, you might even be mocked. But here's what you won't be: ashamed, and that's everything. Because honor is not about perfection, it's not about pride, it's not about never falling, it's about getting back up the right way with grace, with courage, and with your principles still intact. It's about doing the right thing, especially when it's hard, especially when it costs something, especially when no one else is doing it. That's the kind of honor the world has forgotten, but it's still alive in ancient teachings, in quiet temples, and maybe in you, if you've listened this far. Maybe that voice inside you, the one that still believes in integrity, in quiet strength, in something deeper, has been waiting to be heard. So here's the challenge: don't live loud, live true. Live in a way that, years from now, your name still holds weight, not because of fame, but because of honor.